So, what's up with the Gen AI hype? I have a bunch of students that are asking me, what will happen when I graduate? What is the job market right now? And coworkers are asking. Companies are having layoffs, and we all hear it in the news. Meanwhile, the stock market is going up, and job reports are looking great. So what's happening there? I want to dive into that a little bit today here. I got a couple of great reports on Gen AI and the impact on the labor market. And so there are a couple misconceptions. There's some truth to it all, of course, but there's also some things I think we have to understand as we think about the impact of Gen AI on the labor market, on our day-to-day jobs. So the first one is ChatGPT. The makers of ChatGPT, OpenAI, together with Cornell University, went into this quite empirical study of can tasks actually be replaced by AI? And they went through all these different tasks that the ONET database has, commonly used database, which actually was used across a bunch of these reports, and looked at if ChatGPT or GPT-4 can take on these tasks. The answer is yes, a lot of it can be done by GPT and by large language models like GPT, for example, Google's Gemini. Now, of course, we don't see it in our day-to-day. Like, I don't necessarily see the replacements in my work, and I know a lot of people out there don't feel like, it's not happening yet, right? We hear about it and we see some of the layoffs, but is it really happening? And that's where I think, initially I smiled at this report from McKinsey. It's the most beautifully done, best graphics in it. It's this impact study on generative AI, and there are some very large numbers in here. So McKinsey is predicting, additional economic growth in the trillions of dollars. So that makes me skeptical. Looking through their approach, though, becomes clear that they're taking a very long-term thinking approach. So similar to, the internet came out a very long time ago, but it took time, and it took a big, hyping it up in 2001 and then crashing in the dot-com bubble to really see the long-term impact it has, from companies like Google and Amazon being created to it really being the core of the working from home pandemic world in 2020 and 2021. Similarly, McKinsey says that AI will be in our lives, and the midpoint of that adoption being in 2045. So it's a very long time until we see it being part of our everyday living. That said, though, there is going to be a huge advantage of companies that early on adopt these technologies and reach a competitive advantage. And I do think for you as an employee, there's a big advantage of trying it out early on and seeing how you yourself can supercharge your capabilities. When we look at the World Economic Forum report right here, and, McKinsey is starting to highlight this as well. So this came out in, I think, June 2023. This one is later on in the fall of 23. It's also quite US heavy for being the World Economic Forum, but that's okay. I think the data is just more readily available. In McKinsey's report, we see sales, marketing, product, R&D, engineering are heavily impacted, and that's where the biggest gains will be. But it doesn't necessarily mean it will replace people. And the World Economic Forum report doubles down on that. So they're saying we will see more augmentation and less automation of jobs. There are some jobs that eventually will be fully automated or, mostly automated, but the vast majority of jobs, like let's say a salesperson, will be augmented with data and AI. McKinsey actually talked quite extensively about, there has been data and AI for a long time, and we have seen the adoption of data and AI into more and more businesses. With that, Gen AI comes now on top of that. So there has been, I think, a $10 trillion impact of data and AI. There are companies that embrace that early on, the Ubers of the world, so to speak. And now we're seeing the same with Gen AI. What are the companies that embrace it to get a competitive advantage? And the total economic impact, that we see over the next 20 or so years, that's what creates this kind of $1 trillion number. Thinking about the augmentation then, right? Like if you're an engineer, for example, you might right now write code and then you have to document it, you have to Q&A it. Those are tasks that can be taken on by AI. So automated documentation, automated Q&A, maybe code completion, right? Those are all things that make someone a lot more efficient. One of the questions then that comes up in the Burning Glass report over here, this is the latest one from February of 2024. It's like, who is to benefit from all of this? The honest answer there is stockholders, right? The people that own companies. They are going to benefit greatly, especially in the beginning, because there's going to be a reduced cost And anytime there's a reduction of cost, right, a higher efficiency, that creates higher profits. And so when we talk about, rolling layoffs right now happening and yet stocks are going up, right, that might be already what we're seeing a bit. All of these reports talk about that there will be eventually a shift and a change of how where people are working, but it takes time. It takes time for new companies being created. And so that will be quite painful. So all of these reports talk about the need for education, ongoing education, right? Currently, our education system is very front-loaded. So most of us got our education before we were 21 years old. Now we may need, a lot more education later on in life to understand how to use these technologies in our labor market and with these changing environments. I think for you as a person, the more you can right now just try using these technologies and see how they help you. It doesn't mean you have to use it every single day. But even when I have a task, right, I just see if I could do it a little faster, a little better, using Gemini, using ChatGPT, and using all these other little tools out there. I started using one to record, transcribe my meetings and write down action items. But just what are ways in my day-to-day work life where I can use AI to make myself more efficient? You will benefit from that. And maybe your career will benefit because you will be an expert at some point of how can I use these technologies in our company, right? And maybe you make some recommendations to your bosses. So anytime there's disruption, it's tough, it's painful, but it's also an opportunity for those that embrace it and see what they can do with it.